Amaya Victoria, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Heard about you from meeting you at the Awaken Expo at the Plymouth Meeting Mall. Greg MPC's a great guy. It's great that he's doing another one of those events coming up. Glad you're going to be there. And I'll be there too, of course. Got your website up. Shamanic healing, that's my kind of thing. People have told me at spiritual events that I am, for all intents and purposes, a shaman. Never knew I had it in me, but then again, I kind of knew I had it in me because of the stuff that I use, the things the healings I've done on people too. I have tried to do healings on people, and apparently I've been more successful than I thought I could ever be. So, of course, we all got that infinite potential. So, I guess best way to do this interview right now, I need you to set the stage for the rest of this interview. Please introduce yourself. Tell us your life story, primary source perspective, what you experienced and what you learned and witnessed that causes you to do the stuff that you do. So knock yourself out. You've got the floor. And then after that, we'll get into the really nitty-gritty science behind how the things that you do work and all that. So knock yourself out. Please introduce yourself, your life story. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for getting in touch with me. I really believe there are no accidents here or coincidences as we walk by each other. And I don't know if my assistant said something to you or we just looked at each other and exchanged information. You received my information. And I'm so happy to see when you came through the email, and I think we might have to do part 2 and 3 of this if I give you my whole life story here and what drove me to this place, what has led me to this moment as we're speaking together. So I want to thank you, and I want to welcome all the people that are going to listen to this. Welcome all you beautiful people, you miracles, really. I really believe, and I was told by one of my teachers many years back, he looked at me one day, and we were talking about something, and I was complaining about something. He just waited till I was done, and he said, I just think people are miracles. He said, would you like to know why? I said, yes. He said, because they can live through so much. They can go through so much and carry so much and still want to live, learn, and love no matter what. If that's not a miracle, I just don't know what is. And that has stuck with me, not only for myself, but for all of us, really. Good, bad, or indifferent, no matter the intent, well or ill. Inside, we are all souls and part of a community of eternity here. So, how and why am I here today? Well, let me see. Where shall I start? I will start with the fact that I was born in 1956, premature, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. And it only came to my attention last year when I was with a group of women. We were out in Ricketts Glen. We had rented a cabin out there, about 10 of us, and I was saying that to someone, and they looked at me really startled. They said, you realize you're a miracle. And there's that word again. And I said, how so? She said, in 1956, she said, John F. Kennedy's son was born a little under 4 pounds in the early 60s, and he died. And you survived. In 1956, this was not a common reality. I spent my birth was placenta previa. I had a twin that calcified 5 months in of my mother's pregnancy. My mother and I are written up in a medical journal somewhere. I would love to see that. And I was the size of the palm of the nurse's hand. I was fed by it with an eyedropper, head full of dark black hair. My mother wanted to name me Rebecca. I am Jewish by birth. My grandmother vetoed that because it wasn't Jewish enough, and I was named, my birth name is actually Robin, and they named me that because I look like a little bird. And I said to my mother at one point, Mom, do you know how ugly little birds are when they're first born? And she just looked at me and said, yes, but you were just so precious, really so delicate. And so vulnerable. That's why we named you that. So I consequently spent my childhood in leg braces because I was in an incubator for many months, and I guess maybe the placenta previa, I did not get enough oxygen. I wore those leg braces at night, not during the day, and it took many years to diagnose me. My mother, who was very vigilant about many things, noticed I was walking on my toes and went from doctor to doctor until a doctor at, I don't know if it's Pennsylvania Hospital, one of the hospitals, Temple or Jefferson, Dr. Steele, I'm sure he's no longer alive because I'm 67 years old, diagnosed me by watching me walk across the room, saying it rather loudly without prepping my mother, my poor mother, that I had cerebral palsy. And I spent many, many years sitting in a place on Broad Street every 6 weeks getting new leg braces because I was growing. And it was really a trial of patience for my mother and for myself because I was a young child. Consequently, for many years, I spent my night times in leg braces, and thankfully that led me then as an adult to becoming a weightlifter and an athlete, because I was told at some point in my teens that I would wind up in a wheelchair by the time I was 30 because of what I had, the condition I had. And I thought to myself, no way. So always inside of me was this will to live, grow, and change, this drive to be. I grew up in a household of really severe dysfunction. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just a fact. I spent many, many years in therapy and healing work and etc., resolving the trauma and the scarring of all that. And I still have scarring. I don't know if it fully goes away, but I say this just as a fact. There was alcoholism in my birth family and a great deal of violence. My mother and father and my family fed off of anger and distrust, and that was the theme of that suffering. God bless all of us. I have come to learn years later, that all suffering gets carried by the sacred, and the sacred can have many, many names to it. It can have eternity, it can have God, it can have Yahweh, Chwanchka, it can have Baruch Atoi, Denoi. The name of the great creator creation always carries us, regardless of what that suffering may or may not be. Whether we perceive it as suffering or as it is true suffering, it doesn't matter. It all feels the same. So I had a lot of suffering in childhood, a great deal of ostracization, and I'm a natural extrovert, and that was like one of the worst things that could have ever happened to me. I found out later in one of my past life regressions that was done with me that I had a lifetime as a male teacher, and I overused those gifts, and therefore the great creator put me away for a while, and then I came back here to karmically become very humbled and to do the teaching and the gifts that I do now with as minimal amount of ego as possible. I know I'm weaving between the two because it all connects together. And you're welcome to stop me at any time if you'd like. So in that, though, I was born a very gifted child. If I'd been born into a village or into a tribe, one nation tribe or an Aztec tribe, the medicine people would have spotted me around 4 to 6 years old, taken me from my parents, and initiated me for about 20 years. Now, in the age we are now, many people believe that they like to do a spiritual bypass. They like to just get to the angels singing in the heavens and the angel dust floating down, and that's not really how it happens. Initiation is a real bear. And I was told this by Ed Rothwell as I was in his drumming consciousness group. And when he said it to me, I must have gone really, really pale. And he said, don't worry about it. Your life gave you that initiation, which would have been about courage and integrity and forthrightness and being able to stand up to things, like being put into a raging river up to my neck. It didn't happen to me, but if I had been back there, standing on my toes until the elders said that was enough, and if I went down off my toes, a willow whip would come out, because that's the initiation process, along with that opening of the gifts of sight and knowledge. Because I believe we're all very, very connected to the universe. It's a matter of getting out of our own ways and allowing for what is now occurring, this big push to change our minds. So that's the shamanistic way. Our minds have got to change now. The way we think and perceive things must go from the Anglo to the community, because indigenous people do not live isolated and away from each other. They unfortunately do now because of the addictions, etc. But that is also coming full circle, as I've seen in the last 5 to 6 years, 10 years with the people of the One Nation tribes all over the world, actually. They're getting much more recognition because it's their turn to save us and to help us remember. So in my childhood, I would see people in my room. I love the fact that the movie The Sixth Sense came out, because when that finally came out, I didn't have to explain myself every time I was in front of a group of people doing a healing circle or a channeling or a presentation. I am just like that little boy and then some. I used to see dead people. I used to see people that other people could not see. I heard things. I dreamt things. I knew things. I'm what they call clairsensus, I think it is. I'm really something in this world, and I'm not the only one that this world has not seen in a long time. And it's time for people like myself, yourself, to step forward, because we're going to be the ones to help this place come around this corner, hopefully. So, and I would tell my mother about these people, and there was one woman who scared the bejesus out of me. I would see her in my mind's eye, and I would see her I called her the witch in the window. I know now she was called something else. People tell me all the time, and it's just a spirit that is filled with a great deal of suffering. I also saw other people around my bed, and my mother would say, "There's no one there, there's no one there." And of course it wasn't, not in her perception. And the funny thing is, both sides of my family have very deep gifts around intuition and around healing. But those generations, those 2 or 3 generations behind me, did not acknowledge that. I'm sure the generations behind them did. I am Hebrew by birth, universal by law. That's what I say. So my Judaism is obviously a very deep mystically based, as most cultures and religions have those mystics in the background, religion and spirituality. So my mother would tell me that, and then she also told me, and I don't remember this, that I would come out of the bedroom in the morning, tell her things, and they would come true. I don't remember that piece. I have had to take her word for it. God bless my mother. She died October 31st. What year? What is this? 18 years? Yes, almost 18 years ago. And the caveat on that is she, in her walk, went and became a very religious Baptist. So Halloween was the time of the devil, and doesn't she go ahead and pass on that day? And isn't that a conundrum in itself? My mother had a great deal of mental problems and addictions. My father was a rageaholic. I had 2 younger brothers. I was the scapegoat. So I thought. Now, years later, I saw a picture of my middle brother that my mother had taken, and he had the same exact look on his face as I used to feel inside being around my mother, which is a great deal of discomfort and sorrow, because she had a good heart, but she was a very difficult woman, burdened with what she was burdened with. And I say that in all honesty. I'm not trying to be a good, quote-unquote, New Ager. I really have done the work necessary to be able to know that my mother loved me. It's just other things did get in the way. And I wouldn't call that love. I wouldn't tell anyone to accept that type of love, but that was the best she could do. And I knew that because when she passed away when I was 49 years old, towards the end there, we had a tremendous healing. May have not happened if she had not been dying of cancer, because she wouldn't have allowed it because of her personality disorder, but it did happen where she deeply told me how much she loved me. And I believe her, and I believed her at the time. So from 7 years old till about 14, I shut everything down, so I thought, because I was so deeply ostracized. There was so much violence in my household, so much attack and unhappiness and dysfunction, and school was no better for me. I realize now it was just a really bad match between being born in this area and who I was. And there was a lot of lessons to learn, because it's made me who I am today in my wisdom, my depth of compassion, and my deep understanding, and also the vision that there's another way of living. School, I was really deeply rejected in school. By the time I graduated in high school, I was a C or D student, not because I'm not intelligent, but because there had been so much emotional harm done. But I still dreamt. I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer for the people. And I still dreamt, and I would dream the big major things that were happening in life. Later in life, I used to dream about the Challenger for years, seeing it blow up. And for years I would say, it's going to go, until I stopped dreaming about it. And then, unfortunately, so many years ago, one did blow up, and unfortunately those souls passed on. So I would dream things, and I would know things. I would look at people. I thought people worked the way I did, where I would walk by people and hear their thoughts. When I was an adult, I was in a diner on Glenside, because I lived here for 49 years before I moved to the Southwest into California for 18 years. I've been back now for almost 2. I was in the diner with a partner, and we were getting ready to sit down. My partner was very male-looking, she's a woman, and I could hear, it was like a movie, and I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for the phenomena. I never did. It always just showed up. And Andrew, I heard in my head, it was like a story, like a movie, everybody's thoughts about trying to figure out who Ruth was, what sex, why she looked that way. And I just looked at her. I said, "Well, you're getting quite a review here." And I laughed, and we sat down. These are my gifts. My gifts are the ability to. I'm one of the older empaths, feeling people and all their things. And I was the empath of this family of mine. I was not just a scapegoat. I felt everything. I saw things coming, and it was very, very hard on me. Extremely so, exceptionally so. In that process of knowing things, even though I was shut down because I was being damaged, quote unquote, scarred by things that were going on, and it went to the dream state, it still was there. I became an avid reader, and I love music. Those 2 things saved my life. And in the process, because I would go to the public library, and there was one on Castor Avenue there that I would go to quite often, I used to always read the astrological, I forget her name, Jean something, in the Inquirer. And I thought to myself one day, I was about 12 or 13, maybe 14, I thought, I want to be just like that. I want to do this work. Years later, my cousins all told me that I was always fascinated by all of this. I picked up my first book on reincarnation. I didn't know that's what it was. It was Arthur Ford and Ruth Montgomery. And Ruth Montgomery did a lot of writing about walk-ins, about reincarnation, about spirituality. They were all from the 50s and 60s or 40s. Arthur Ford was a channel, and I couldn't get enough. And it's like being like having known about a candy shop and finally finding a candy shop and walking in. So I was led to these books. It began to awaken for me. I was fascinated. That's really much of what I read, much of what I was looking towards. Of course, the dysfunction continued in the household with my parents divorcing, a great deal of suffering and trauma around that. My mother having tended to her alcoholism and having that whole process start for her. The mental illness was never really held well, but she did the best she could. My father left when I was trying to think how old I was. It's been years now. I believe I was 13, I believe. I think I was maybe a little older than that. I can't remember if it was the last year of junior high or the beginning of high school when he left. And my parents had a lot of suffering around his leaving, a lot of pain, a lot of blame, and a great deal of shame. I'm going to stop using the word a lot of. This does not cultivate how professional I really am. So that was a very painful time for me because I had a lot of issues about how I looked, and that age group is hell anyway. And watching my parents go through so much anger between themselves was very difficult. Still, that continued to cultivate my need to find another avenue of breath and living. It continued to cultivate me into this place of what I call now the participation, the ministry, the service, the offering that I give to the planet, have given to people on this planet for 42 years. I'm very human. I've been married twice. I have 3 children, 5 grandchildren. I have lived a very large, albeit sometimes dysfunctional life myself. I've gone into recovery from my own addictions. My brothers and I have not had a good relationship together because my mother split us. I've been trained as a therapist, so I know now that she probably had a borderline disorder or some sort of personality disorder. When she was passing, I did attempt to bring us back together under a realistic process that one day one of us is going to pass away, and why not have a resolution, at least a connection? Because besides my mother and father, these two men, we knew each other the best in many ways. So I continued to read, and I got married and moved out, met a man, moved out, lived with him, had my first child and then my second child. And in that process, at 23 or 24 years old, I met my main teacher, Evelyn Isidore, who used to live in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. She never taught me how to channel. She taught me that I was wanted and cared for, and there was other realities beyond what I knew here. And that was really the next step for me, and a big one. And I was off and running. And my marriage began to fall apart because I began to change and get help for my own disorders and dysfunction. And it's no one's fault. It's just the compatibility. Energy, they say energy seeks its own level, water seeks its own level. Well, as our frequencies change, then either things fall away, people, places, or things, or they come to meet us and they continue with us, or we go on to different experiences in those realities. So I began to go to expos. I went to a life expo in Harrisburg, I think it was, for 2 years. And at that time, I began to get addressed by those healers that I had a very large purpose here. Evelyn was the first one to address that to me, and I was terrified to go to her for a channeling because I was afraid of it. I was afraid because generally people had her voices or spoke for other people. They were in mental institutions. That's the generation I came up in. So Evelyn was the first one to tell me I had really three main purposes: to know the word I am, to help this place around the corner, and to learn about patience every which way possible. And I tell you, Andrew, every time I think I know what patience is, there's another thing that comes up that I have to relearn it again or continue to grow on it. So Evelyn was my spiritual mother and truly a mother figure for me. I was the youngest of 25 women in that group, and that's where I opened up to the channeling. And I met Evelyn through my friend Barbara Rose, who met her at some sort of gathering. She went to her for a reading. No, she went to another psychic for a reading. She was living with my mother. I saw that card on my mother's table, and for some reason, quote unquote, as Barbara was leaving the room, addressed it with her. And I went to this woman for the reading. I forget her name now. And then Barbara was telling me about this woman, Evelyn, and she was going to go to a past life regression. Would I like to go? And I went. And Evelyn, we did the regression. I saw two places at the house that I eventually wound up buying in Northwood, Pennsylvania, and rehabbing. I didn't know it was there. As a woman out in the prairie, and as a man, and I forget exactly what that was. And I actually thought I was going to get a man's lifetime, and the biggest one was a woman out in the prairie. Years later, I was walking home from the store with my then husband, my second husband, in the Northeast or Northwood area, and he started talking about this lifetime that he remembered out in the prairie, and he described exactly what I had seen that I never talked to him about. It was so, this constant connecting and these miracles showing me, and I'm sure showing other people, that there is a universe and it's all connected and we're all connected to each other and we meet up with each other again and again, and the universe has got our back, and good, bad, or indifferent, it knows what it's doing for us, with us, and because of us. And we do help to create this, but we're not the creators of it. We are the co-creators, and in that humbleness, we really need to stand. So in that process then, with Marcos at that time, it was fascinating to me that came up. Now that was many years after I met Evelyn, and it was actually after Evelyn passed away, and I was there for her passing from lupus. So Evelyn really opened the door to this part of my walk, because I am both human, I'm very, very human, and I also have this very large gift or service for the world. From there, I went and was taught by other healers. I did years and years of healing work, every modality possible. There were no names for those modalities at the time. In fact, I was doing a lot of those modalities when I started as a healer at 25, 26 years old. I just didn't have names for when you put one finger down on the left hip and one finger down on the right shoulder. I didn't know a name for that. I just knew that there was a balancing that was going on. Or when I would channel for someone and all this information, I had no knowledge of them and who they were, would be spot on, or also directives for their life. Now, I started with the tarot cards. That's how I started in this process. And I would use the book at first, and then one day, this voice started speaking through me. I knew it wasn't me, or I would know things and just see it in the cards. That's how I started. And it led then to Evelyn's encouragement in this group of women because I would feel spirit walk all behind the circle and then stand behind me. And again, I was very nervous because I did not want to be in a mental institution. And I knew from my family history there was a great deal of mental problems, and that family really caused a lot of problems. We all did. We were in this family together. But I was encouraged, and Archangel Michael, I know now, I did not know at the time, he would just say, "My name is Michael, I'm coming through to clear the channel." And you could hear that the group I now work with, Isaiah, which has many members have come and gone, and there's more than that, just them now, would be practicing the messages back and forth. And at one point, I brought Evelyn a tape of something I channeled for her, and she made me wait a whole week before she came back and told me that, no, I was not crazy, and the information was very, very valid. So from there, I went on to the Life Center and learned and was trained there, and went to many retreats. I was hooked. This was my life's purpose. And in the meantime, my first marriage fell apart. I lost 2 children in a divorce, and many years later, I've made amends to them and reconciled with my one daughter. My son still, and I can't blame him because so much pain and suffering has not spoken to me. I remarried, have a younger daughter that's 11 years younger than my eldest daughter because it's a second marriage. And in that process, opened my own business, began to travel, and take the channeling and the healing work and what I knew as a teacher around the country. I was also, I created a Child Within workshop from scratch that I used for many, many years. Many, many years. Now, consequently, in that process, because I was with all the spiritual teachers, I needed grounding. So at some point, the earth healers began to show up, the shaman, the medicine people, those that believed in the drumming, those that knew the walkabout for the earth and the leadership of the earth, what the earth has for us, what Pachamama has for us. Ed Rothwell walked in my life, and I started doing healing work with him. And the first time he did the earth beat, which is just one drum beat, and you wait 10, 12 seconds and do it again. The first time we did that in group, I thought my guts were going to fall out of me. I got so nauseous. When I was working with him in private sessions, he said to me in one session, "Now we go to earth," and I began to scream hysterically because I was terrified to be on earth because I thought earth had hurt me so. It wasn't earth, it was my walk, it was the people of earth, and it was those agreements, fortunately or unfortunately, that I had to live through. And that's where that interest, and I always was connected to the earth. I would run around in Northeast Philadelphia with my shoes off. I still do it. I still don't like having shoes on my feet. I'm a little more conscious at 67 years old not to run around outside on the asphalt and the concrete without any shoes on. But I prefer barefootedness. And I always was fascinated with growing things, with the birds, and with the wind. I have a medicine name that has the word wind in it. Wind is my brother. Water is my grandmother. And really the earth is my home. So at that point began a series of events. Of course, this is a course of years that this went on, in which I went to Sedona. Finally, went to Sedona. I don't remember the first time I went, but it was many years ago. I was fascinated with the Southwest. and I went to Sedona for the first time and came back, and that's where I hope to eventually wind up in my elder years here. So with Ed, this started, he was very clear. He did not want to be on the resume. He wanted us to really understand what the drumming was about. I am now doing drumming circles at Solutions and at Circle of Miracles out here, and we'll bring them online once I can get a space where I can drum and not disturb my neighbors here. I will be teaching a drumming consciousness group, which, as Ed taught it, which is, really learning about the drum, having a relationship with a living entity, which is the drum, the rattles. I have a conch shell. I'm really a sound healer, and I did not know that until I began with the drum, and I realized that I was listening to the bottom beat every time I listened to music, because I can dance and I love music. It's in my soul. So from Ed Rothwell, I met Elworth at a circle. He came out, and the first thing he said to us is, we don't understand the Anglo way of attitude because of that process being like sheep. And he bad like a sheep in front of us. And I was like stunned, but at the same time interested. So twice or three times I had the privilege of going out to his place in South Dakota and spending a week or two in a room doing process work with him. And consequently, he gave me several hawk feathers several times. So I've worked with Elworth, and also then worked, went out to starting going to Sedona and working with the shamans out there. Now, in that process of living in Pennsylvania here, I did find indigenous ways of being here, but mostly I still was with Ed, and I was doing my channeling and all that work on the spiritual end. It's all spirituality, one way or another. And then I met my partner at the time, and I always wanted to move to New Mexico. And very shortly after we met, I sold my home here in Pennsylvania and moved out to the Southwest. I lived in New Mexico for 5 years. I met Wolf Martinez out there. He is Lakota. I went to many of his inipis, which are the sweat lodges. And I did one vision quest, and more I became more and more involved with the indigenous culture, the One Nation culture. I'm trying to remember how the drumming really took off for me, because with Ed, he built my first drum for me. I wound up irreverently breaking that drum, having to put it into a fire when I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to burn it up. I could not just throw it away. It's a medicine tool. It is a healing. It is the entity unto itself. And I had put it underneath in the plane instead of carrying it on and coming down the chute. The frame broke, and I had to tell Ed about it. And he built me another drum, which I have now. It's a 22-inch frame drum, and that drum has a voice of its own. Now, I still am a channel. I still am a healer. I do heart-to-speak healing. I do shamanistic healing. Now, the shamanistic healing, I don't know how to put in words the difference between it. I just know. The example I can give you is the other day I had a client in the office over here in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, and we were talking about something, about her mother, and I had my hand behind her neck, and we were just talking about this, and I was doing some heart-speak work and some shamanistic work, and when we were done the next day, she called me so excited because there was this whole shift between her and her mother, and whole shift because she was talking to me about something. I said, Kabbalah would probably help you, particularly about all these things. And she received in the mail a thing for Kabbalah here in Newtown, addressing the intuitive, addressing being a channel, addressing the spiritual side, because in the Hebrew religion, particularly in the very strong Hebrew religion, what I do is still like the Catholic or the Christian religion. It is not allowed. It is not accepted, but that seems to be turning also. So in this process, I moved to California after being in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 5 years. when we moved to Santa Fe, as we're crossing the line into Santa Fe, I turned to my partner and said, oh, my God, am I going to be cleansed? If I would have known what I was talking about, I would have gotten out of the truck then and walked back to Pennsylvania, because everything that I did not address hit the surface, and even the things I did address hit the surface for me to clear away. It was a very intense and very trying time, but absolutely necessary as I look at it now. And beautiful. It's beautiful in New Mexico. Oh, the environment is just beyond. And that's where I met Wolf. That's where I did my vision quest. That's where everything was sparked even deeper in me around my life work and in my living. I was told years ago that, because I also worked with Alice Rukowski out here, and I was in a sweat lodge, and I heard her name, and I was hearing her name like once every 6 months, and I heard it every 3 months, and I heard it a month, and then finally in 1 week I heard it 3 times, and I went to Spirit and said, okay, I'll find her. And she really helped me with, she used to do work around sound frequency, color, and vibration. And I did a 10-day retreat with her, and in the 10th day, naked as all get out, I was really speaking about letting go of my burdens, throwing giant boulders into the ocean, into the water, the river, and the sun opened up and shined down at me at the end of it. And she really opened up this whole idea of community. It was all about community for her. So when I left Pennsylvania, I had been teaching classes here. I still have, it's my third blanket, is the blanket of the elder, my elder blanket. I gave my first blanket away when after I moved out to New Mexico. I was traveling to Colorado doing expos in the area, and I was doing a channeling there. An Indigenous man was sitting in front of me across the room, and when I was done channeling, he cried through the whole thing. Spirit said to me, you need to give him your blanket. And of course, I argued and said no, because I was at that time very much into my possessions. And I had to learn, because Wolf told me this, that I would learn to give everything away. And 3 times in my life, I have lost everything. And everything, if you could see my apartment, you wouldn't believe it, because everything was returned to me. And then it was like this big thing about giving things away and not being attached that has had to happen for me. And I finally get it. I move again. Not much is going with me except the clothes on my back and myself and the things I need for my purpose. And probably artwork, because I love art. So in being out there in Colorado, when I saw this gentleman, I was like, no, I wasn't going to give my blanket away. And they left, and my assistant at the time turned to me and said, do you know how much so-and-so's wife gave to us? Because it was all donation-based. I said, how much? And it was a large amount. And it wasn't because it gave me that amount. I knew that was a signal to give him the blanket. I said, would you please go get them? I need to give him the blanket. And he came back, and I handed him the blanket, and still weeping, he said, why? I said, go to your elders in your tribe and ask them why. They will help you. Because I knew he was terribly depressed. And he left. And across from me, an Indigenous man who had a booth looked at me. We didn't say a word, and he nodded his head 3 times, yes. And, the second time I gave it away in a workshop about helping, it's called the Twilight Brigade, helping the vets pass, the veterans pass, because many times they have no family due to mental illness or other circumstances. And so I was trained to go sit and hold vigil with them as they were passing away. And I became deathly ill in my 50s. Unknown to me, I was carrying a great deal of metabolic issues, and I wasn't cleansing myself properly, and I didn't have my feet totally in the shamanic way, which is really where I stand. And so I went to this workshop thinking they were going to do it for me at some point, because I thought I was dying. I felt like I was dying. I had some very serious illnesses that only now, coming back to the East Coast, are now getting resolved. Because I came back here terrified. I came back here not knowing. All I knew is I needed to come back, not wanting to come back. And out of that, there's so much getting healed and resolved, and so many people that I'm meeting for my benefit, for their benefit, for the world's benefit. So just know that sometimes you make moves really frightened, and it's just the way it is. So unknown to me, I was getting very ill, and I was in this twilight brigade, and we spent a weekend dealing with the fear of death and how to handle death. And it was very, very deeply profound. And I brought my blanket, and I brought stuff for, I didn't know it was going to become a giveaway. They just said, bring some things. At one point, I looked down. They had folded my blanket and an American flag like you would for a vet that had died, and put the flat edges side by side. It was beautiful. I wish I could have taken a picture. Well, I wound up giving two other things away, and I turned, and there was a Marine sitting there in a wheelchair, or he obviously was very ill physically. And I was told to give him the blanket, and this time I didn't argue. And I turned towards him with the blanket, and he burst out into tears. And the Marines around him, did that call they do, and I handed him the blanket. Unknown to me, I found out that he was a high priest in the Wiccan religion. I did not know that. See, this is my trusted spirit now. And I walk in the way that I feel things and know things that I can't explain to people until after the fact. I'm deeply governed by spirit. And I now have had to crawl back to spirit because I misaligned myself. I did not stay true to what I know. And now, literally, as one of my teachers said, she had to crawl back to spirit. I'm now finishing my crawl back. Sorry, I have call waiting. I hope that doesn't interfere with anything. I then moved out at some point I moved from New Mexico to California. Someone I knew from California used to come see me. And at one point I asked her if she would sponsor me out there. The first time I put my feet down from flying out, I thought, I'm home. I went out there for 4 years, 4 times a year to work, because I was too afraid just to take that leap of faith. Are we still online? Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sorry.
While you're speaking.
I just want to make sure. So I finally moved out there to California. And in California is where I did the Twilight Brigade, where I met Mitch and Gabe, where I met these people that were very, very deeply, profoundly my soul group. That's where I met my teacher, Dina Metzger, who's a wonderful shaman, medicine woman, profound, this little 5 foot, 4 foot something elder. She's my elder. I'm part of her group, the 19 Ways. Thankfully, she let me back in because I've had the pattern of not following through and running away from things, and I'm deeply grateful that I'm part of this group now. So I moved out to California, to Marina Del Rey. I knew I needed to be there. And there is where my understanding of shamanism really took hold completely. I was in one of the dairy. Dina holds dairy now on Zoo, but this was pre-COVID. And there was many rabbis in this dairy. Dairy means council in African. And we used to sit knee to back in chairs against the wall every dairy because we would gather, and it meant council. It was really for the people. We would discuss the topic. They would do healing without words, only sound, in the center of the circle on our patio, and then we would have this discussion of dreams, because the dreaming for the people, there are many dreamers there, and every dream we dream is really for the people. And in this group were several rabbis, and we had a group outside circle. We were sitting outside, and someone brought out the conch shell that Dina had. And I had been fascinated with this because in the process of living in California, I started traveling to Sedona once a month to work, as often as I could, before it became Airbnb, and unfortunately it's had to go through a gentrification that will now slow down and go back to an original way of being. And I was out there in Sedona, and I went to, my friend has moved since then, I forget what part, Carefree, Arizona, I think it is, I forget the name of it, for a weekend workshop. I just had surgery on my neck. I was out there. I was told by a man who did work over me with a feather, an Indigenous man. He said, "Sis, you need to get well. We need you. The fingerprints and footprints of God is all over you. This is too soon, too much." But I was there anyway. And I did a channeling in my booth, I got one of these feather fans that were uniquely made that then, but later in my time was stolen from me, unfortunately. I felt terrible when my feather fan box was stolen from me because I did not take it out of my trunk, and I didn't realize if I had a fob in my car that they could pop the trunk open. So so I was out at this expo, and we came into the room at noon for, I think it wasn't 12:12:12, it was 11:11, 11, something like that, and where I met my energetic teacher, Iguala. I thought, when he opened his mouth and spoke, I thought, this is the clearest channel I have ever met. And he was two-spirited also, like me. We're considered two-spirited people. We carry the male-female very strongly, and we tend to be more of the homosexual persuasion. And the conch shells went off, and the mother drum was going, and I did this thing in front of my chest of a triangle. I made friends with people in the booth behind me, and I worked on them, and they gave me this beautiful crystal I still have. And one of the gentlemen of the couple came to me and said, do you know what that triangle means? I said, no. He said, 4 of you did it in the group. And he asked someone else. He said, oh, the Atlanteans used to do that to bring energy in. I said, oh, really? Interesting. So I was doing a group channeling in that booth, and I had a feather fan that I asked them, I said, I want that fan, and they were going to hold it for me. I just looked at it and told them I wanted it. And Spirit said to me, go get your fan. It's getting ready to get sold. And I ran down that aisle like jumping over things, skidded up to that feather fan, said, hold that for me. I'll come back. It was right after the group, and I had one client left that was on my table. The woman brought it to me and said, you have a great group of guidance because somebody else was looking at that fan. Did you see that gentleman and woman? When you came up, they were getting ready to buy it. They were getting ready to ask me about it. Because you brought it to me. I said, I was coming to get it. She said, no, I needed to bring it to you because of this. They turned to me as you pointed to it and said, it's been sold, hasn't it? She said, you've got a great group of guidance. And I said, thank you. So that was the first time I heard the conch shell, the horn. And I knew, I just loved it. So I was in a circle. We were sitting outside. It was a break. This rabbi brought out the conch shell and started blowing it. And I turned to her and said, You're blowing it wrong. You're holding it wrong. She said, how do you know? I said, I don't know how I know. And she handed it to me, and I blew it. I held it correctly, and I blew it correctly. And Dina said to me, well, you just found your next instrument. And I have one. I bought one almost immediately. So I have a 22-inch drum, which I use to drum over others. I have my rattles. I have my feather fans, whom a woman, Kelly Two Wolves, who's on Facebook, made for me. I just bought another beautiful one because I was at a powwow months ago that I saw it, and I thought, one more. I don't have any room in my box anymore for things. I just love feather fans. I put them on people's bodies in different formations, different almost like artistic structures, like the Merkabah, those geometric forms, and they do their work. I have pictures of these things. I'm fascinated with the energy way of being, but the shamanic way, which is based in the fact that we are not the most special things here. The earth is the whole, and we're part of it. And we walk shoulder to shoulder with Spirit. We raise our face to pray. We don't bow our heads.
Well, thank you.
Community.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't like interrupting my guests, but got about 10 minutes left of show time. So
Okay.
you have a fascinating life story and all, and you're keeping it very educational and fun and interesting to listen to in the process. But I do need to get into some questions about a few things before we close this. And one thing I noticed on your site, what's this thing about the entity Kuan Yin? Is there something? Same Master Guan Yin, whatever you want to say. The Mother of Mercy, Goddess of Compassion. I don't think I've mentioned her yet in this that entity in your little talk here. But why don't we get into that and what it is about that entity that's so prominent, working with her?
Thank you for that, because I forgot to say that Evelyn channeled Kuan Yin. She was the first one. Her eyes would never blink when she was channeling her. And that was, 30-some years ago. She channeled her to the day of her death, honest. Kuan Yin started about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. She came up on my radar, and Spirit began to say, talk to me about Kuan Yin and about how that she is going to be one of the leading entities or energies to help us here. She's the mother of mercy. She's the mother of the people. She carries people's soul. She's the lady of the dragon. She is that deity, that entity of not just the fire, but of community, of the whole, of the soul purpose. I don't even have my writings in front of me, so I can't tell you everything I've written about her, but she is really one of the high goddesses. There's an Indian word for her, an Asian word for her, that I can't pronounce. It begins with a P. She's considered a saint. And she has been brought forth to carry us into a whole opportunity, if we can do this, of being community. It is of the feminine nature, and that is not to take away from the masculine, because Spirit has told me again and again, the male and the female will walk shoulder to shoulder. That will be the balance within and without on all things. But she is a very strong female teacher to bring us into harmony. Her whole balance is almost like Kali. She cuts through this stuff, but she's here for the harmony, the beauty. The water, the pouring of the water, the air element. Kuan Yin is apparently to be a major influence for us because it's like Pachamama, the earth. It's that feminine nature. Does that help answer it?
Yes, yes. And another female entity that you have featured on your site here, the Lady of the Dragon. Have I ever heard that before? I mean,
That's Kuan Yin, the Lady of the Dragon. Yeah.
Same entity. Okay.
The same entity. I've just done several on her. And that's actually the last one I've done in almost a year. I've had some things go on, but that's going to be coming back now. And I started doing that, and then all of a sudden I saw other channels and healers begin to speak of her. And I would like to put together a workshop where that's who we work with, for messages and for connectiveness. Because, it's not just up to Spirit now. It's really up to us. We're the ones we've been waiting for.
Exactly.
It's for our children.
Exactly. Really. Now, by the way, I said I was going to make some of this interview pay-per-view. Forget I said that. You had a very nice life story worth listening to, so this entire interview will be free for everybody. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's okay. If a guest has enough to keep talking about, that's what I'm willing to do. It's not a big deal. I got a 9-to-5 job, so it's not like I need the money from advertisements, but I certainly use it, but it's not really a big deal. So, Solutions for Daily Living and Circle of Miracles, those are two places I've went to a bunch of times in my spiritual awakening. I'm happy to report, actually, I had Daniel Teague of Vegas Store Healings clear those places, so they're spiritually clean as a whistle, so hope that helps your work there. It's a little harder for me to get to those places now with the other things I'm doing in life now, but maybe I'll...
Did you say you helped to clean those places?
Clear them, yeah, Daniel Teague
of
Vegas
Store
Healings.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and it's needed again, I can tell you.
Oh, okay, well, all right, let's go maybe 5 more minutes. Why don't you, I guess, I'll let you make a sales pitch out of this. Your services that you offer, why don't you, you got, it says you're channeling, shamanic healing, heart speak healing, and gathering of the masters are the 4 services that pop up when you go over the services tab on your your site. Why don't you quickly touch on those, like maybe 90 seconds for each one, all on the fly.
Okay, let me
talk
do
about the
an
science behind
elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do an elevator pitch here. So I am a channel through and through since I've seen spirits since I was very small. My channeling work is almost, I can't really describe it. It's like being a fly on the wall. All I know is they start in the center of your life and work their way out. This is not about probability or prediction, which sometimes that does happen. This is for your life path. It's for your life. It's for your heart, your soul. They will answer questions. This is Isaiah in the group, and whoever else shows up. This is held in the light because I don't let just anyone come to my dinner table. There's deep prayer that gets used here. It's profoundly effective. It helps emotional clearing, physical, mental, energetic clearing, and I have seen people's lives change on a dime because of it. I have a friend who, a client, not a friend, a client who literally, I have told me one time, you have saved my life. I would not be here if it wasn't for the work that you do. The heart speak healing is, it's not Reiki. It's something I've been doing forever. I just can look at you, see where the energy, where I need to place my hands. Sometimes your body will tell me, your guidance will tell me, your ancestors will tell me. I'll hear from my side, and I place my hands like and it's not intrusive and it's not inappropriate. Like I can put my hand on your forehead, and the energy can run down to your ankle and do some physiological or energetic work. I've had blockages removed from people on their thigh about their father. I don't know. Sometimes things go where they go. It's not just a clearing of the main meridians. It's a literal opening, healing, and lifting up to the heavens, everything finished and unfinished, and opening up integration so you can go forward and flourish in your life and let go of the past, really. And beyond that, I don't have all the words for it. The shamanic healing is similar. I will sometimes put my hands on you, but I use my voice, I use the conch shell, I use the drum, the rattles, the feather fans like I spoke about, sage, the charcoal burning with copel on it, and different incense, etc. We're standing, really letting the earth come up and rise and heal us. I would like to do a gathering where we're just on the earth, because the earth can heal you faster than I could ever do, really. The group channeling, they come through, and I'll be doing that at the Circle of Miracles in April, I believe it is. The group that I work with will come through and initiate a topic of sorts, addressing the group. You'll know when they're talking to you, even if they're not looking at you, because you'll feel it. They do answer questions because that is important. The biggest thing is called the Gathering of Masters, because it's now about the communion between those of spirit and those here who have come to stay and wait out the great changes and bring light. So we're the ones that are going to take this disease, darkness, and take it away so that we'll come back no more, so the balance of the true light and the dark can be here. We will be known as those generations. And I will be doing other workshops like the Circling of the Heavens. I have a whole list. I will be opening up to do a butterfly clan class, because when a butterfly flaps its wings, tornadoes develop across the universe here. So I have other fires in the iron. It's just a matter of now getting it together and getting it out there for the people. And I've been doing this for 42 years. I love what I do. I'm born to do this work. You can contact me at my website, amaya@amayacenter.com. My phone number is there for you. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media stuff. I'd love to help anyone who needs help. Come see me, look at the groups, because I am going to start groups. My work, because I'm now an elder, is really going to go to the group level. I would prefer it that way, because there's really no time left to do it one-on-one in some ways. I find it to be profoundly healing and life-changing in so many ways. Is that good? Did I do it?
Yes. All right. So thank you very much. It's been an hour, and like I said, this whole interview will be free for everybody because you just kept talking and talking, and I was quite intrigued by what you had to say. It's not very often that I have a guest who can give such an interesting life story for such a long segment of the show, but yeah, I'm glad you did, because
I know. I just had a healer do work for me, and he said, my God, he said, if I put this up on a movie screen, and people looked at it, they would go, first of all, is she still alive? Second of all, who the heck is this woman? And third of all, where can I talk to her?
Lovely. Well, I'll get this up.
I just didn't talk about,
It's cool.
All right.
So nobody can say everything. So I'll get this uploaded to YouTube hopefully by tomorrow. Very busy guy. Please bear with me. I'll send you the link after I do. And you're welcome to do what you want with it. So take care. Namaste. Best of luck to you. And I'll see you
God bless.
at the
Shante
Mall
Om
Conference.
Shante. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.